Kate. Well, as Kate said, the band in front of you is something a little bit unusual, so I'm here to say a few words about it. First off, we always like to say, why does this band sound different? The most common reason we like to cite is that it is an E-flat brass band, which simply means that the instruments carrying the melody most of the time are E-flat instruments instead of B-flats like you'd find playing the melody in a modern band. There are other reasons. One of them is that this entire type of brass instrument is a kind you don't see much anymore, called the sax horn. And that's not the same as a saxophone, but it is named after the same instrument inventor. The sax horn has got an interesting bore. It's not too bright, it's not too dark. It's kind of in the middle. It makes for a good sound if you want the entire band to have the same tone quality. So these are all sax horns. Now within the type of sax horns that we have here, we have the E-flat side, that's over to the right, and then the B-flat side, everything on the left. Within that, we kind of alternate back and forth from the highest to the lowest. Way over on that side, we've got E-flat cornets. Then we go down about half an octave, and on this side we have B-flat cornets. Going back to the right side, we have E-flat altos. Going back to the left, we have B-flat tenors and B-flat basses. Same pitch, but a slightly different color. Going back to the right, we have the lowest brass instruments in the band, the E-flat basses. They kind of look like tubas, but they're not. If these were modern tubas, they probably couldn't do that. We have also different sizes and shapes of instruments, but I want to mention first our woodwind section. We have a couple of woodwinds, a piccolo and a flute, and that puts a little bit of a sparkle on the top that the brass can't quite get up to. And of course we have a battery of percussion back there. We have our snare drum, and we have our bass drum, and a pair of cymbals. And these drums, by the way, are calfskin head, rope tension, a little bit loose, so they get a nice rumble sound as opposed to the modern, very bright, aggressive sound. Now to the shapes of the brass instruments, we have kinds that look like what we're used to today, bell-forward instruments. Looks a lot like modern trumpets and cornets. Then we've got bell-up instruments. Normally you just see that with tubas and euphoniums, but we've got them in different sizes. Do we have any cornets here today in bell-up? No, we don't. Sometimes we do. We have circular instruments. These were mostly intended to be played on horseback, so you could hold it with one hand and the reins with the other. And finally, we have the kind that's most identified with the Civil War, and that's the over-the-shoulder instruments, like our entire front row. The reason that these are shaped that way is so that the band can march at the front of a column of troops, and the sound goes backwards to entertain the good guys, not the guys who are going to shoot you a few miles down the road. So, to make it a little clearer how these sound in isolation, one of our cornet players, Steve Kessler, is going to play a solo for you, and this is Hero's Quickstep.
Hotel to greet the president-elect with a musical fanfare. March 4th, 1861, Inauguration Day. The normally festive occasion was made dark by the need for rooftop riflemen. Music for the ceremony was furnished by the United States Marine Band. Resplendent in their bright uniforms, they were led by Italian-born Francis Maria Scala. The stirring sounds of his new Union March would underscore the theme of Lincoln's inaugural address. Lincoln spoke directly to the 7 states and pleaded for them to give up the folly of secession.
In your hands, my dissatisfied fellow countrymen, and not in mine, is the momentous issue of civil war. You can have no conflict without being yourselves the aggressors.
Fort Sumter fired on. South scores bloodless victory. President calls for 75,000 volunteers. Confederacy now up to 11 states. More states to go out any day now. Extra, extra. Washington, unarmed, is cut off. The only serviceable rail line into the capital is through Baltimore, which just happens to be in pro-Southern hands. Massachusetts troops are determined to force their way through the city to the awaiting trains. Using stones, pistols, and shotguns, rebel rioters do everything they can to stop these troops. Until now, there have been no casualties. Shots rang out, and blood from both sides runs in the streets. New England troops risk all and reach the awaiting trains to take them to Washington. Marching in triumph down Pennsylvania Avenue, the 7th Massachusetts Regimental Quickstep.